Hi, welcome to my video on the 2025 James Gunn movie, Superman. This video will start with a spoiler-free review and then move into a, thoughts section where I spoil absolutely everything about the movie. I might spoil previous DC. See, that's the thing. This is the DCU, not the DCEU. Yeah, I think when I get into the spoilers, I might spoil earlier DC films, even though I appreciate they're not technically in continuity. Well, I guess one of them might be. Anyway, yeah, the movie is rated PG-13, so will this video be. And yeah, I knew I was gonna love this movie. Somehow it is exceeded my expectations. I'm so glad that James Gunn is making Superman. Oh, yeah, that's what I've been saying to myself every day since I heard that he was, and now I can see that, yeah, it was holy crap. Okay, let's see. Before I get too much into it, I'm gonna try not to restate what Movie Bob said. No, I don't agree with absolutely everything he's said, but I do think he, covered a lot of this movie quite well. I'm going to try to talk about stuff that I didn't hear him say. He makes shorter videos than myself, so let's see. I think, yeah, let's see. I think that's it for the, yeah. So, let's see, yeah. Let's get into the writing of this movie. So um, the core setup is that this, yeah, this does a really good job setting up, future adventures without feeling like it's just doing that legwork. Like, it is actually a movie in and of itself. And yeah, I thought they did a really smart thing by, at the very start, we're told, this is not the first, there's, it says in text, 3 centuries ago, they started discovering metahumans. 30 years ago, Kal-El came to Earth. 3 years ago, Superman first appeared. Then there's something 3 minutes ago, which I don't think I'm going to give away. And then I felt there was a missed opportunity to include 3 seconds ago. The audience realized just how devoted this opening text is to using the number 3 at the start of each of these statements. But yeah, it means that we don't have to sit through the backstory that everybody knows. Like, if my grandparents were still alive, I feel confident that they could explain Superman's backstory, and I don't think any of them ever opened a comic book in their lives. We don't need it, and James Gunn appreciated that, so we can just dive right in. Yeah, they get to spend the time on what happens in the movie, not setting up all the backstory. One thing real quick, so I've been watching Zach Milne Talks Movies Journey to James Gunn's DCU. You can consider that a shout out. Excellent videos. In general, fond of his channel. He pointed out that in Superman Returns, they kind of just expect you to already care about some of these characters from the other movies. And yeah, I agree with him. And I'm really glad that that is not the case for this movie. This is not a movie that just says, well, you know who they are, so of course you care about them. They actually make you care. And there are some decisions. I think there's going to be a lot of conservatives who are not going to like this version of Superman. And I swear that's not the only reason I love it. But I will get more into that. That might... Yeah, I'll definitely talk some more about that. Possibly not until the spoiler section, but yeah. The movie immediately sets up, this is a world in which, comic book stuff happens sometimes. And Superman is one of the people who tries to stop it from hurting innocent people, But one thing I saw several... I didn't read any full review, but I did read the... on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes... Do they still call those the blurb? So I saw several people say that they thought the film was bloated, and I appreciate it wasn't going to be in the blurb. Maybe at some point I will go and actually read this. It's not going to happen soon because my wrist pain, but I don't know. I can't help but wonder if the people who feel it is bloated read comic books, because, and that's, I'm gonna try not to be insulting here, because several of them, like, I don't think every single negative thing I read about this movie was necessarily a terrible point or like bad faith or something, but as someone who read, between 99 and 2007, I read basically every comic book I could get my hands on, and to me this just felt like, it... and yeah, it felt like reading a bunch of comic books. It reminded me somewhat of how the two Sin City movies also combine, or yeah, those combine multiple stories. I thought this movie handled it much better than the 2019 Hellboy, which, as much I have some positive feelings about that movie, I will acknowledge it doesn't completely get it right, but yeah, it felt like, sitting down and reading multiple comics. Not that it feels like they smush together multiple movies, but, if you've read comic books, yeah, sometimes they'll tell one story over several comics, and in each of those comics, there's something that isn't there in the other comics. I did not at all feel like this movie was bloated. I was a little, nervous, because I don't know that I've really felt it was the case with any of James Gunn's movies that I've watched, but I totally see how it could end up like that at some point. But no, the story is structured really well. They do a really great job with setup and payoff every step of the way. There's a couple of things where you're gonna notice something that's gonna there's gonna be something more with that later, isn't there? And I don't think there was there wasn't a single thing where I thought that and then there just wasn't. It always paid off, and I was very satisfied with the payoffs. I think that might more or less... yeah, there's a lot of psychological accuracy. And this is one of those where it feels weird to talk about authenticity, because it's not really set in our world, but it creates a world very similar to our own. There's some comic book stuff going on, and then makes that feel authentic, Like, I feel like there are people who inhabit the world of this movie. There are people who just go to work, have a nice night at home, just eat dinner, brush your teeth, and go to bed. And that is something that some of these movies don't get quite right. Sometimes it does feel like, oh, this is just kind of, they're the heroes, and that's, it doesn't feel real in a way. Yeah, high level of detail, and I know I'm not the first person to say it, but I love the tone of this movie. Movie Bob said it's not... crap, what was it? yeah, I forget what he said. Some people are saying it's this, but he felt that it was actually Super Friends. And right. He said some people are saying it's like, many people are saying it's like the, that's a dig on Trump, not on Movie Bob. The animated universe, DC animated universe, which I have to admit I am not super familiar with. Does Batman the Animated Series count as part of that? Because if so, yeah, I watched some of that. I could not tell you what, how much. I think as much as I could, but I do not remember. It's been so many. It's, yeah, 25 years, more than 25 years, I think, since I watched. But I don't think I've really watched any other animated DC. Haven't been avoiding it, just hasn't happened. But yeah, he's Movie Bob goes on to say it's actually more like Super Friends, and I definitely see that. Yeah, it's this is a movie by and for people who love comic books and like, crap, what was yeah, I'm afraid I forget. Movie Bob also said which like age of the comic books it's very much like, but um yeah, I'm not doing the best at not just restating what he said. Anyway, yeah, let's see. Then there was the other thing with that. Yeah, it has bright colors. There's a sense of optimism. It cares about the characters. It's not just spectacle. I think that does pretty well cover the tone. The dialogue, there was really only one part that like outright bothered me, so I'll get that out of the way immediately. At one point, one character describes something, and then the other character says, "Yes, I know, you've told me this before." And I think he's making fun of the trope. I think that's what James Gunn is doing there. It's the stereotypical exposition by way of conversation where the characters having the conversation all know everything that's being said, But yeah, I think that was supposed to be a joke. And other than that, yeah, like each character you get, like their personality really comes through, and there is growth through dialogue, and it's been a minute since a movie captured the voice of the Superman that I always, gravitate towards in the comics. I'll acknowledge that it's not only, there's more than one version, but kind of classic Superman. Yeah, this is the most consistent that's been. I'll grant that there, some of the stuff for the Cavill version, the Snyderverse version. I think that covers the writing. So yeah, the direction, James Gunn, he's just really, really good at this. There's a real dynamic sense of visuals to the, crap, I just realized I completely forgot to mention, I did watch this in 3D, and that is recommended. Yeah, the 3D really pops. In fact, I'm gonna real quick add, this is a good place to put that there. Yeah, the flying scenes are freaking incredible. And it takes advantage of the 3D even in non-action scenes. There's I noticed that there's a scene where I really noticed it where is kind of just a meeting between people, and some of them are like sitting at a table, and the ones that are the closest to the camera stick out to you, so it feels like you get to be part of a meeting. Okay, that's not the best selling point. But yeah, just, he knows how to make this stuff look incredible in 3D, even if you do watch in 2D, but in movie form, you know, and that is something some directors who are otherwise really talented making these movies, they're just not, they don't know quite how to make it work, because it's very different than from when it's on the page, you know, and yeah, James Gunn consistently shows. Right, I guess I should just briefly say, so I've watched the 3 Guardians films, Guardians of the Galaxy films, as well as the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, and the Suicide Squad, the 2021 Suicide Squad movie. I have not watched his older stuff. At some point, I'm gonna have to. And I watched some of the stuff he wrote. The 2004 Dawn of the Dead, and did I dream that, or did he write those 2 Scooby-Doo movies? The ones with Matthew Lillard, perfectly cast in, you know, a very close second to my favorite Matthew Lillard set of performances after Stu Macher. I think he did. And yeah, let's see. I think that does more or less cover, but yeah, he's got a really good handle on this. He understands who you can take from the comics and make really work in live action. That's another thing, you know, sometimes with these movies, the people making them get a little bit too ambitious, and they try to make something work on the big screen that just can't quite work. You know, some concepts are just, yeah, you gotta keep them on the page, or sometimes in the video games they also work, but they don't quite, you know. But I don't think he's made a single slip up in all of the ones he's brought to screen. Yeah, the cinematography is phenomenal. So I swear I'm not gonna make this like a screw Zack Snyder video. I'm just gonna mention some things, but I definitely think he made a mistake when he. I'm trying to limit myself to one. I think he made a mistake when he decided that in Man of Steel, the flying should be filmed basically like someone is like, oh crap, that's Superman flying, I'm gonna film it, you know, and there's like these zooms and just trying to capture it, trying to keep up with it. I get what he was going for, and I agree that it was necessary to do something else. I think this makes the better choice. There are times where the flying is from a bit of distance, so you could really appreciate how fast and how much ground he's covering in that way. But it's never like headache-inducing, which was also like, why would you do handheld in a 3D movie? I'm trying to move on. I think that only counts as one, because I'm still talking about the cinematography. Anyway, yeah, there are times where the camera is like right in front of him, and we're, you know, yeah, it feels like we're flying at like supersonic speed with him, you know. This was something, you know, I'm not saying it's the first time, but it also worked really well when, you know, stuff like that appeared in Iron Man. You know, it's tried and true. Now that you can do it, I'm not saying they should have been able to, you know, way back when. Yeah, the editing is quite good. There are some really choice edits where something hits harder because of what it cuts from and to. Yeah, just perfectly timed editing. That is also, you know, maybe especially now that he's working with DC. I think he also nailed it in his Suicide Squad movie. But yeah, James Gunn, you know, if you get out of his way, he can make a comic book movie look like a quote-unquote real movie. I don't necessarily like that distinction, but I am willing to acknowledge some of these don't look like movies. Let's see. The production value is amazing. Like, it really does feel as expensive as it was. And yeah, the world feels lived in. It feels like stuff is actually, you know, when something breaks, it's not like, a background. It's, you know, they actually, there's times where there are dedicated, you know, shots dedicated to showing this thing is breaking, you know, because of superhero combat and such. Yeah, great set design. I thought they did a phenomenal job on Lex's like workspace. It really, really felt like this. It's just, yeah. There's some classic Lex Luthor going on mixed with this sort of, you know, tech bro. And I appreciate that. You know, I'm not the first person to compare him to a tech bro. This version rather. Yeah, the costume. I really appreciated how much this did capture those. Like, it doesn't feel like it's in any way ashamed of comic book roots. Like, it's a, no, like, it's a comic book, you know. We took a comic book, put it on screen. People are gonna want the costumes, you know. I'm sorry, but if you don't want the classic costumes, what are you doing, you know, watching this? Like, you know, you're welcome, obviously, but no, like, we've had all those movies where they felt the need to, like, try to avoid the costumes in one way or another, and yeah. Um, yeah, they also do a good job on makeup. There are characters in this who are, I don't know if I want to give too much away. I'll just say there's stuff with their faces and such. The music is excellent. You know, there's enough of a modern sensibility, but also this vibe of like classic Superman. Yeah, that kind of goes for everything in the movie. Yeah. The sound design is great. There are some sequences that are incredibly effective because of that, and I hope I'm gonna remember to talk about them in the spoiler section, but I refuse to give them away. And that's another thing, as Movie Bob points out, they did not give, like, overall I would say they gave a little bit too much away, but there's a lot in the movie that they did not give away. You have not seen this movie by watching the trailers, and that is also, it's too rare. I hope it becomes more of a theme. Maybe, you know, maybe they'll look at the, you know, the let's see, is it the marketing decision, or is it like, it feels like an executive decision, but whoever's making these decisions to put way too much of the movie in the trailer, I hope they look at how many, I think this movie is going to do well. And yeah, you don't have to put everything, and there was stuff in the trailers that, you know, actually appears fairly early. So the characters, I think I'm gonna briefly talk about. So yeah, Lex, wonderfully slimy and smarmy, and just like, if you've been looking for a Lex to just despise for a while, yeah, here you go. Okay, so before I say the following, I want to make clear, I didn't watch all of Smallville, so I can't say for sure, you know, maybe they botched him at some point in the run. But in the seasons I watched, I loved Lex Luthor on there. Michael Rosenbaum, phenomenal job. This is the first time since that Lex where I really deeply cared about Lex. You know, I don't have any problem with Jesse Eisenberg. I think he's great in the Zombieland movies. Adventureland, that was him, wasn't it? I'm sorry, dude. I think I sometimes get you confused with Michael Cera. But what helps is that I don't think I've actually seen Michael Cera in anything yet. Haven't been avoiding him. Anyway, yeah. Obviously, Kevin Spacey's canceled. We're glad he's canceled. I'm willing to acknowledge there were notes in his performance that, yeah, there were some bits that, so some people hate the bit where he like shouts the word wrong. I don't know. I thought it worked for what they were going for there. And obviously, Gene Hackman, I didn't feel that he was that much like the Lex I know from the comics, but there was definitely good stuff there. But yeah, Nicholas Hoult, holy crap. I will admit, when I first heard it, I was like, well, is he is the best choice? But yeah, holy crap. I gotta see more of these where he is just the worst, the absolute worst. And you just, I thought it was great in the Menu as well. Yeah. For a while, all I knew him as was, Beast from the X-Men with the younger cast movies. But yeah, holy crap. Sometimes a comic book story is only as good as its villain. If that were the case here, then this one is amazing. Yeah. And yeah, I like this. Yeah, there's definitely some Elon Musk going on. Yeah, I gotta say that was probably the most vibe I got. But I do also know more about him than the other tech bros and such, or tech billionaires and such. But um, yeah, and for sure, this is a movie that wears his politics on its sleeve. You're not gonna be leaving it and being like, I don't really know what that was supposed to... No. You're gonna... unless, I guess, you didn't pay attention to anything happening in the world in recent years. Yeah, they do such a great job. Oh, just, yeah, I think... And that is also, again, somewhere where James Gunn excels. I am aware some people think his Ronin was forgettable. I disagree. I think it's valid, but yeah, not how I felt about it. And yeah, each of these, right. Okay, the human villains in the Suicide Squad, not necessarily the best. Not all of them, at least. But yeah, yeah, this is my favorite Lois in some time. I thought they did a really great job balancing. I appreciate that in the comics, she is a certain way, and in the okay, this will not... Christopher Reeve. Holy crap! I cannot believe I. Okay, we're all gonna pretend like I didn't just blank on his name. In the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, they try to take the comic and put it on screen, which I have a lot of respect for. The 70s were a time where movies were getting somewhat grittier. I'm fairly confident the original Superman movie with Christopher Reeves came out in 1978. You know what else came out in 1978? Halloween. I appreciate there are different genres, different age ratings and all that, but yeah, times were a-changing. And the people making those early Superman movies were like, no, there's still room in this world for optimism, for hope. And I'm so glad that James Gunn agrees with them. The Margot Kidder Lois Lane felt a lot like the comics, and I get there's some product of the time kind of thing going on with early Lois, and they kept that around for a while. I'm just gonna make absolutely sure it's probably not something I have to deal with. Let's see. I think that might be okay. Yeah, I can deal with that later. Anyway, yes. So the let's see. Right, Margot Kidder's Lois Lane. Back then, if you wanted to write a strong woman, you might make her a little on the obnoxious side. And I do think Margot Kidder, I've seen a little bit, I'm not super familiar with her, I'm afraid, but I've seen a little bit other, clearly she's acting, she's not, it's not like, she's just really, impossible, and they wrote the character like that because that was all she could do. No, that was what she was asked to do. And there are also times in her performance where there is some sweetness there, and I do appreciate Superman brings out the sweetness in her. You know, they are doing a thing there. They're not just like, you know. But I think, right, and that's also very important for me to say, this is a progressive channel. We support women's rights as well as women's wrongs. I love the 3 seasons of the Marvel Netflix Marvel Defenders versus Jessica Jones. So I'm absolutely not saying that there's something wrong with a female character being like that, you know. As a general rule, I'm not the biggest fan of when characters are kind of, you know, obnoxious. With if it's not gonna like mean something in some way, or there's gonna be character growth. And I think ultimately I didn't feel like they did enough to get her away from that. I appreciated the times where she's sweeter. And I think maybe also just she was really, I'm sorry. Clark Kent is such a nice person. He's not like nice guy. No, but he's genuinely a sweet person. And she, like, doesn't treat him super well. That's always been something that you know, bothered me. Not just in those movies, in general. Yes, so, the, yeah. By now, you know, we realize if you're going to have a female character, you know, that the audience is meant to like, it might be a good idea to make her, you know, yeah, a bit of a kinder person. And they do a really great job striking a balance here between that and still making clear, I mean, she is an amazing reporter, you know, because that is also part of, you know, there was, I don't know if it was everyone back then, but there was an idea, Rogers knows this, back then where, yeah, reporter's probably not necessarily going to be the nicest person, maybe confrontational, that sort of thing. And they do have some of that here. But it always felt tempered by, you know, no, she is actually, you know, that's, because that's part of it. Why would Superman be with a woman that he doesn't think is genuinely good-hearted? That was always something that you know, and like I said, that does go back to some of the comics. Yeah, anyway, I think that more or less covers her. Yeah, I'll just briefly say I really appreciated, yeah, we don't have to sit through endless scenes of just, you know, Clark and Lois, you know, it's like, oh, you know, what exactly is going on between. I don't think I want to give away exactly the reveal, but yeah, fairly early in this, it's made completely clear what their relationship is. And yeah, let's see that, yeah, right, yes, before I get to the center, I will just briefly say one thing that I did take issue with here. And this is not the first time that James Gunn has dipped his toe. There is some sexism, maybe even misogyny here. I think I'm going to talk about it in detail in the spoiler section, because I can't really go too much into it without spoiling major, yeah. But that is definitely something. Right, and I'll just very briefly note, I've talked about how, you know, optimistic and hopeful this is. It is still a James Gunn PG-13 movie. He likes to push the PG-13. He doesn't push it as far as he did on Guardians Volume 3, but there is some stuff. You know, if you're thinking of taking your kids, you know, I'm not going to tell you can't, but just be aware. There is some stuff here that's, yeah. It is, I would say, ideally it's for age of 13 and up. Yeah. Right, I just realized I didn't mention, you know, Rachel Brosnahan, fantastic performance. Also, yeah, Superman himself. I believe this is the first time I've seen. So let's see. I think his name is David Corin Sweat. I would look up by my wrists. You know. Yes, I believe this is the first time I've seen him in anything. I have got to see him in more, and I don't just mean I'm looking forward to more of him as Superman, which I most definitely am. But yeah, fantastic. I know I'm not the first person to say it, but yes, he is the best Superman Clark Kent since Christopher Reeve. Like, it is unreal. Yeah, and I've liked some things about every single one of the live action ones. Well, I guess I didn't watch the yeah, starting with the Reeves movie, Christopher Reeves movies. I have not watched the older Superman. I'm actually not 100% sure I realized there was a theatrically released Superman movie before the first Christopher Reeves one, but again, you know, Zach Milne talked about it, so now I know. And knowing's half the battle. Yeah, this... It's not that Superman was, like, my favorite. You know, there are other... You know, I mean... Yeah, you know, Peter Parker Spider-Man and, I guess, Logan Wolverine. I haven't read that much. I have no problem with... I know there's at least one other Wolverine version. I just haven't read those comics. I liked what we got of the presence in other movies. But yeah, those were always my two favorites in the comics. But with that said, this is the first time that a Superman movie that was like currently in theaters, not like a re-release, really felt like 100% like the Superman that, like, yeah, I read, you know, as a teenager. It's... I will grant, Superman Returns did get close a lot of the way. I can't really say what it is without spoiling, but then that might, in fact, tell those who have watched that movie exactly why. Yeah. Anyway, yes, I'm trying not to go off on Zack Snyder. There were issues I had with those. Yeah. But yeah, he stepped right off the page. It's unreal. The look right down to the suit and face and hair and the voice, like, he absolutely nails it. And that was, you know, when I watched the trailer and we heard the voice, I was like, that's Superman's voice. You know, it's exactly right. And yeah, this is a Superman who really does care, who really does want to uplift regular people. And you know, that's a lot of these. The hero is kind of the status quo warrior, and that's not Superman. Not in this movie, and not in some of the, you know, best books I read. Yeah. I think I will just briefly note... Yeah. Yeah. Again, you know, Movie Bob already pointed out before me. You know, the Justice... Okay, they call themselves the Justice Gang in this. I'm slightly... Are they the Justice League? I am not super familiar with... I mean, I know, you know, Green Lanterns. One of them is a Green Lantern, but I don't really know the other two, so it's possible that they're League, but maybe they're Justice Society. But anyway, they are a bit more like the ones who work for like the government kind of thing, whereas Superman, not yeah. Um, yeah, if this Superman existed in the real world, he would have participated in the No Kings protests. He would be right there, stopping Trump from arresting and deporting Zoran Mamdani, who, like, on what charge exactly? Because you don't like his politics? Yeah, Trump said he was only going to be a dictator on day one. And, I mean, usually he's lying, but I know it's hard to... It feels ridiculous to say out loud, but yeah, technically this is still Trump's first day in office. Just time has not moved since he took office. And if Trump himself is watching this, you might be confused about who I'm referring to. You know him as Zorhan the Communist, which I swear is something you jot down when you wake up in the middle of the night still drunk and you were trying to think of an OC for like a ripoff of Conan the Barbarian. Yeah, just this is very much, the humanist Superman, and I'm here for it. I'm so glad that we're finally, yeah, like I said, Superman Returns got close. Haven't really, the Snyderverse, there's some major things that stand in the way of that there. But yeah, I really hope this is going to prove, no, a lot of people want to see the earnest, good, loving superhero. We don't need them all to be these gritty, so yeah. I think that does cover what I want to say about characters here. Right. Great job on Ma and Pa Kent as well. Let's see. Yeah, so the pacing, I was very impressed with how, like, yeah, there were times where something would happen and I would find, I was sitting there in the theater and I was like, this is gonna take a while and it's kind of gonna grind it to a halt because, people expect this sort of thing, but it never really happened. Like, yeah, one of the things are the big action set pieces, and I do have more to say, but I want to yes. So the special effects, fantastic job. Obviously a lot of CG, but there are also things where they did have, some practical. There's bits where I could tell, okay, this would have been CG if they didn't appreciate. No, try to make it with live action elements at least as much as you can, and yeah, and the designs are fantastic. I don't want to give away. I think I'll try to talk in the spoiler section about in detail, but yeah, they did a really, really, really good job with the just. I'm running out of ways to say it. James Gunn gets this. He understands. No, we do want detail from these things. Not just this like vague kind of. And yeah, it's fantastic. So right, so before I talk more action, the sci-fi stuff is also great. I am not going to be expanding on that before I get into spoilers because I am so happy that I did not know a certain thing going into this. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, if you like comic booky sci-fi stuff, there's definitely something for you here. Yeah, the action, Movie Bob already pointed out, it doesn't focus purely on the big spectacle. It cuts to like people taking cover, buildings, collateral damage, stuff like that, and yeah, it felt like, oh, there's actually people here. This is not just, well, time to overwork and underpay the effects people and just kind of, there's going to be several minutes now of just people fighting, which, I mean, to be clear, I do love scenes like that, but like Movie Bob points out, it's gotten a little old by now. We've seen it by now. And yeah, they do such a good job. It always feels like, no, there's people in danger here. Like, we gotta, Superman has to protect these people. This is going to go very badly if Superman doesn't. If me saying that made you think of the Snyderverse, I just want to put out, I'm not trying to, like, say you're just imagining things, but I will say I didn't technically say his name until just now again. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, part of the reason that we love these superheroes, yeah, we want to see them save people. We want something to strive towards, to hope for, and again, there's too many of these movies that, too much power in the hands of executive producers who don't get that that's part of it. They think that you should just throw something big on it. I mean, I'm sorry, but there's other action movies that we can go to for that, and some of them are also very popular. I'm not gonna present like but no, part of it is and sometimes part of it is that we're watching someone who's like, oh, they're not gonna save that. That can also work, but like the relationship there is important. If you have a hero or an anti-hero that's from a comic book, and you're not at all concerned with, whether or not, they get saved, like, I mean, I'm just going to point out that is one step towards making the Disney animated Hercules movie. Shout out to Lindsay Ellis from years ago when she did a fantastic video on that. I've until I watched that video, the longer one, not the. She did one as Nostalgia Chick also, but then later made a more detailed one. And yeah, before that I wasn't sure what, because I like Hercules like elsewhere, but she did a fantastic job as usual. I think that might just about, so yes, I already mentioned that it's, there's some PG stuff, and I guess I will just briefly, there's some violence and such here that pushes some disturbing material, I think that's everything that I can say without spoiling anything. That means that it's time for the rating. Yes, I give this 8 reasons to look up in the sky and hope that help is coming out of 10. And that brings us to the spoiler section, the thoughts section, and I'm just gonna make sure that it is, there we go, yes. So, 100, oh, right, yes, in case you stuck around, the mid-credits and post-credits are fun. I don't think that you need to watch them in order to, like, I'm glad that I saw them, but, anyway, from here on out, spoiling absolutely everything, and not necessarily in chronological order or anything. Yes, so I was a little surprised that it did actually open with him losing I mean, let's see. the fact that we knew from the trailer, okay, he's gonna lose at least one fight and land in the snow there. Didn't expect it to be the opening minutes. I will say that, but yeah, we meet almost immediately Crypto, and I'm so glad he's there, and he's gonna put some butts in seats. I sincerely doubt that Shadiversity is watching this, but yeah, I don't. I think that Anthony Gramuglia is right about that, and many other things. I think everything I've seen the two of you disagree on, I've agreed with him. Yeah, but yeah, I quite appreciate, and I realize I'm not the first person to point this out, but he's not best boy. He's I hesitate to say, because I know. Well, let's see. Superman himself got away with saying it, so I guess maybe I'm safe. Crypto, sometimes a little bit of a bad dog, and I quite appreciate that. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of American movies where it's like, is this the best little boy? He's a good boy, and I do enjoy a lot of those. To be clear, and then you have like your Beethovens and such, where it's just like, okay, this is just, you know, I get that not everybody loves dogs, and I appreciate they can be difficult, but it feels, I don't know. I was not the biggest fan of those, though I will appreciate that Charles Grodin. I swear I mean no disrespect. I quite like him in what I've seen him in. He did a good job for sure, but I quite like this sort of more middle ground where no. I mean, it's not like the worst dog in the world, but sometimes it can be a little difficult. You know, that was they got a lot out of that. And yeah, there is almost like is that a spoiler? I guess I'll just say this is not the first time that James Gunn has had a character that's like, oh, this is kind of a handful for other characters, and then by the end of the movie, no, that character really came through though, and I did like that it, it's not the thing of like, oh, just focus, you have it within you. No, it's more like, so, see, doggy toy, chew it up like you always do. That was a fun, yeah. But yeah, the trailer just shows, it's Crypto just taking Superman, but no, here it actually, like, it wants to play, so it's just jumping around, and he's like, oh, my shoulder, just, that was pretty funny. It wouldn't be if he, like, couldn't take it, but he does have the super strength and all that, super endurance comes with, otherwise super strength wouldn't be very beneficial. Very useful. I think that does. Yeah. I feel like every time I see Alan Tudyk in something, or don't see him rather, he's playing a robot. But he's good at it, so I appreciate that. And the end credits agree. His name, it's not Robert Paulson, it's Gary. Superman is like, what? I mean, 4 is a name. Didn't you see that movie? They call me number 4. I am number. Wow. Botched. Yeah. Maybe that's a sign. Maybe I should stop making like really vague references. Does anybody else even remember that movie? I think it came out like 15 freaking years ago. Anyway, yes. So, yeah, Crypto. The bit where the Crypto's just running and flying around and just making a mess of the place, and they're like, well, we don't have any feelings, so we don't actually care if it lives or dies. That, yeah. Yeah, I will very briefly talk about. So the thing about, should we play the message from your parents? He likes it when we play the message from his parents. That was a sort of sweet. Like, they do kind of see, like, that's almost like a nurse thing, kind of. Would you like to wait here for your grandkids? He likes to wait here for his grandkids. I'm sure they're right around the corner. Does just, yeah, I because there's first of all, one thing I love about that is we got to show more empathy towards people who need that kind of help. You know, whether it's the elderly or the sick, the disabled, we gotta. And I mean, if you don't empathize with Superman in this movie, you're not, you know, you're probably just so far out in the conservative, you know, you disappeared down a rabbit hole. I mean, hopefully you'll come back, but right now you're maybe not the most empathetic, you know. And yeah, for the rest of us, it's, you know, yeah, we got to get better at empathizing with them. So that's great. And then on the other hand, it's a very James Gunn joke of this thing of like, Gary thinks that Superman needs the you know, like, okay, and that's technically he sort of does need, but you know, the fact that, yeah, that he talks to him like that, and it's not condescending, you know, he's not like, oh, little Superman like that. No, he's like, would you like me to play the message for, because, you know, I mean, this is the same robot that also says, I mean, I don't care if your dog dies, you know, so it's not like it's not like Gary is like, it doesn't seem like he lies. I don't think he says one thing that seems like an actual lie at any point in the entire movie. But yeah, you know, he views Superman as someone that they can help and thinks that it's great to help him. And this is one of those things where, you know, you got to be careful not to get into like house elf territory of like, you know, turf queen J.K. Rowling, who continues to like just digging deeper and deeper. Like, yeah, I will just, you know, direct you to Katie Montgomery and Essence of Thoughts videos on, yeah, her tweet in response to how to police bathrooms. But yeah, it didn't feel to me like these are, oh, they are just happy to be slaves, because Superman doesn't treat them badly. You know, like every so often he needs healing, so he comes to them and they take care of that. You know, I don't love the thing of like, dude, just give him a name. You know, he's asking for a name, but other than that, you know, he does actually, you know, yeah, he when he finds them, you know, that was that a self-harm thing? That was a little bit, yeah. James, I appreciate what you're going for. I love when you go super dark in a lot of your movies. I don't think all of the darkness, some of the darkness in this one didn't need to. The bit where it's stabbing, I think it is Gary stabbing himself in the head with like a screwdriver. Gin and tonic, sorry. But the yeah, you know, Superman sees that and he like stops it and helps it, and you know, he's not like, you can't help me in this kind of condition. No, he's like, you've helped me so much, you know, this kind of thing. So that was great. Anyway, yes. So the yes. One of the other reasons I love the thing about, you know, he likes to watch his parents' message. It you know, it helps soothe him, I think is the words, you know. Another thing there is the fact that, crap, I lost my train of thought. My train of throng. Okay, maybe it'll come back to me because I do have something else that I can move on to. Right, yeah. The fact that, you know, yeah, yeah, this is it. As, you know, this sort of nurse robot thing, you know, yeah, like it is funny to have some, you know, Superman be treated like that, you know, and again, highlights sometimes we all need help. You know, if Superman needs help, you shouldn't be, you know, looking down on someone who needs help in the real world. And it also has this wonderful message of community. Yeah, I thought they did a really great job on that over the course of it. And that's, again, something where you gotta be careful with Superman because we really don't need more of these frickin', you know, what are they called again? Um, Individualist kind of stories where it's like, it's one person who's really, really powerful and they're gonna fix everything. No, that's not how the world works. And believing that makes you just wait around for one particular individual, and then every so often you'll think you found them. That's, there's so many people, gradually it's going out, thankfully, but for a while there were a lot of people, and I think there still are a lot, um, who kind of worshipped Elon Musk, and yeah. Um, but yeah, here we have no. He's powerful, but he needs other people. Let's see. I think that pretty well covers. He needs other people with powers through the Justice Gang. But he also needs like regular people. The thing about the team of reporters, and that's also, I hope that is true, that journalism still really does hold, that good journalism, that clearing up, you know, that is one thing. I did think for a while that it was going to turn out to be, fake news with the recording, but no, that actually was it. But yeah, that's also, I'm kind of glad that it turned out not to be, because yeah, sometimes we do hear negative things about either people we care about or people close to them, and it's important that we learn how to deal with that. And that's, again, it would have been so easy. I can just hear and picture and smell somehow. I don't know what that's about. Executives being like, James, please, Jimmy boy, Gunny, you can't say that Superman's parents sent him to Earth to conquer. That people are gonna hate that. I forget if it's. I know some versions of him in the comics are very dark. I'm not sure if that's one of them, but there might actually be darker ones. But yeah, you know what? You can choose not to do, and that's such a one, Pa Kent. I'm not gonna say it. I'm just gonna point out that not every version we've gotten recently of Pa Kent has been this, wise and loving and giving person, and here we do have it. And yeah, I 100% agree with him. Parents don't tell kids who they have to be. They, let them make their own mistakes and, decide. It is up to all of us to decide who we want to be. And yeah, this is a Superman whose parents wanted him to conquer, and that doesn't mean he has to. We gotta, that's another thing. We gotta break with, brutal old ways instead of trying to bring them back. Like, yeah, they used to be called the alt-right. Now they're kind of just the mainstream right. But yeah. I think, yeah. The last thing I wanted to... Can you tell I like this movie, like, a lot? I like this movie, like a lot. Uh... Have I spent 15 minutes talking about the opening 5 minutes? Holy crap. Okay, I swear the whole video is not going to be like this. It's just... Okay, the other thing is that they're at the end, again, they ask about parents, and, Gary says the exact same thing. And then we see it's the Kent family. It's no longer the L's. They sure took an L this movie. Because that's another thing that we gotta normalize. Your adoptive parents, if you want them to be, if you choose for them to, and they want to be, I appreciate some adoptions don't work out. But if all of that, they are your parents. We don't have to qualify for that. But they're not really the parents, but they adopted. No. They are your parents if that is what you and they want. the fact that they didn't biologically, that you don't have DNA in common, doesn't mean that they're not your parents. That whole thing was always just this. It's this ridiculous thing of like, well, I gotta keep my line alive. Why? What's so special about your line? Like, listen, I get, okay, we want to keep the human race alive, obviously, but some people will be like, well, my line is more important, so I don't care if all of those people die because I don't identify with them. And that's a huge problem, so yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on from the opening 5 minutes of movie now. Okay. Yeah, the thing about, the, let's see, yeah, the moment that, we can tell from right away, there's something about, the hammer of, was it Bavaria? Is that where the boars are coming from? Somebody should notify Cody Johnston. But the hammer. I think I'm just going to call him the hammer. From right away, there's something there. We hear a voice, but it's like slightly distorted. And we don't see his face or even Ultraman's once Ultraman steps out. That's a clue. The fact that, someone takes off a disguise costume kind of thing, but then we don't see their face. That's like, okay, there's something else being hidden there. And that was a clever, yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is a closer equivalent in the comics, but I thought of Bizarro, and that's great. My favorite Bizarro so far in live action. Yeah, I think that might just about bring us to, yeah, the thing about, well, I don't know if he really represents, Bavaria. Well, he's called the Hammer of Bavaria. I don't think that's his birth name, Jimmy. I think they also did a good job on Jimmy. We're going to pretend Jimmy doesn't have a last name. I used to know it, I swear. Anyway, yeah, the thing with, Clark walking in is like, well, if you read my interview with Superman, you would know. Clark, as journalists, we have to make a lot of sacrifices to gain information. Reading one of your articles should not have to be it. That was a great and little dance Clark did with Jimmy was very sweet. Yeah, they also yeah. I mean, I said he was a great Clark Kent, so I guess I didn't have to say in the review itself. Yeah, he's adorable. And it's this. I love the postulate of masculinity here because he's. I'm sorry, if you don't think that this is a man, reevaluate your values, please, for the sake of all of us. Not least of which the women in your lives. But yeah. Deep voice, strong, like strength of character and physical strength and such. And yeah, he's a good guy. And he's not, like, you don't feel like he thinks that Jimmy is Jimmy Olsen. Got there eventually. He doesn't think that Jimmy Olsen is beneath him, and he also, like, when he's he's dealing with that other one of the people working there. Was a little bit of a jerk, and he's not like, how dare you, no, just yeah. We don't know what that guy might be going through, and then we have, and they also didn't push it too far. Like, the only characters in this movie that treat Superman or Clark like genuinely badly are the villains, and doesn't go so well for them. So yeah. Let's see. I think that might just about. I do have thoughts on Zlatko Buric's yeah, his character of Putin Yahoo. I mean, right? I'm not the only one who sees it. Yeah, that's yeah. Let's see, but the yeah, I have thoughts on his demise. I'll try to put them later in the video if I recall, but I'm going to try to keep this more or less chronological, see if I can avoid forgetting to mention. Anyway, yes, that brings us directly to, yeah, then, she comes home and there's a noise and she has a bat. Let's see, she has a bat, man. And then, it's just Clark, and he's like, 3-month anniversary, which is one of those things of like, both of you know that, so why are you saying it? But on the other hand, he's explaining. He's saying, I wanted to cook for you, and the thing about, I'm making your favorite dinner, breakfast for dinner. That's your favorite. Regular list breakfast, not for dinner. But and the thing about, oh, I know you were just pretending. Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, apparently she was just pretending about not liking his prose. It was oh, right, and yeah, I think that was what the other guy was saying. He was criticizing Clark's writing, which also fair enough. You are both, working at this place. You're co-workers, and it's very important how you write when you're, reporting the news. It shouldn't have to be, but, sadly there are cases where someone has not been listened to because of the way they used words. I think that does bring us to, yeah, I thought it worked that, it's sort of, they are sort of together. They've been dating for 3 months. He never said that he loves her, which he does by the end, and then she says it back, and then, yeah, by the end, they're definitely dating, She's a little unsure if she, if she does want this. Yeah, I'm sorry, I do, I find that more interesting than, oh, is she going to be able to figure out that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person? I get why they did it in the movies that they did, and I don't know that I want to give away exactly which ones those are, but, that's not really what we need today, and yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, is this the person that I want to be with? I appreciate, it's somewhat cliche, and I don't think it's necessarily the most interesting conflict that James Gunn has put in one of these movies, but I think it worked. And I do think that this did a better job giving Lois Lane something compelling to do than the movies by he whose name shall not be mentioned for the rest of this video. I swear I'm going to make a concerted effort. Can one person make a concerted effort? I'm going to make a college try. But yeah, let's see. The thing about, interview, like we knew from the trailer that it was coming, and that's also such a, because Superman giving an interview can really work still today. You just got to do it right, and I think they did here, because he is an open book. Okay, he's got the secret identity, but that's to protect his loved ones. Unlike Super King, who has no loved ones. But interview, and part of it is the fact that it's not just like, okay, so what is your background? And that's, everybody already knows enough about that. They certainly know he's an alien. He says, I've always been open about that, but no, it's not a puff piece. It is a slightly confrontational interview. She's being a good reporter. She's not being a jerk. She's actually working to get these, as she points out, these are questions. I'm just saying, I would ask myself this question, And at the end of the day, yeah, he's like, people were going to die. Because that's Superman, like, just, if there is good to do, he does it. And I'm sorry, maybe the rest of the world kind of needs to get on board with doing good. Maybe we need to get back to a place. Well, I suppose I don't know if we've ever truly been there, but it would be wonderful if we could get there. And then again, it's an important balance to and I think this does a good job. we don't want to be saying, we don't want a movie that's saying, like, why can't people just do as Superman says, you know? He is the one who can make, no, he's not the only one who does good. Excuse me. He is one, you know, he's the primary driver in making people realize, no, you should be doing good, you know. He reminds Lois that, you know, the well, I suppose it's really that both of them affect the other, because for the, you know, later in the movie he is somewhat more careful. But yeah, you know, she grounds him. He is sort of the moral center, and she helps him realize, you know, sometimes you got to look before you leap. That was a pretty good line, I thought, in that movie. But yeah, you know, not long after, she goes to talk to the Justice Gang. Yeah, I know, Hawk Girl. I don't love it either. Same, you know, Mr. Terrific also. Wait, did he like it or not? No, I actually don't remember if he liked it or not, but certainly, you know, I'm afraid I don't remember. Wait, was it? No, Joey was the kid, right? Joey's dad. I'm afraid I don't remember his other name. You know, he likes the name Justice Gang. See, it's sticking around, evidently. But the, yeah, you know, she goes to them and says, you know, you gotta, you know what the right thing to do here is, you know. Stop being these fence city centrist, you know, status quo warriors, and actually, you know, do the thing. And that's, again, such an important, you know, because yeah, Superman changes people's minds, you know. Goodness sometimes works, you know. I do feel like we saw that with Zoran Mamdani. You know, he appealed to the better nature, you know, and like a lot of people are saying, you know, Trump winning again means, oh, people just don't care. But, you know, if you actually look at the polls, like, no, they thought he was going to help their finances, you know. It sucks that I wish he hadn't gotten a second term or a first term. But I do think it's important to keep, you know, in mind these other things, you know. But yeah, Zoran Mamdani won because he said he was going to do the right thing, and people want that, you know. It is still popular. Now, let's see. I think that does pretty well get us to... Yeah, I think I'm... I really appreciate... I thought that at the very start of the movie, when we got the text, I thought, oh, maybe we're going to see like a flashback. Ultimately, we don't. You know, the thing about... Well, yeah, pretty much everything that was told in the opening text we didn't actually see. And I think that works. You know, that's, again, you know, you got to be careful. You don't want to overuse that. But, you know, it can really work. And I think James Gunn is really good at showing that it can really work. You don't have to show absolutely everything. And yeah, you know, it's set up. The story, you know, starts there. Anyway, then we have the, during the interview. Which also, it was pretty funny, the thing about, you know, he's trying to turn it off and then he can't turn it off, so she turns it off, and then he's like, okay, start again. You start again. I don't know how this thing works, you know. But yeah, you know, they talk about these two countries, and yeah, I mean, I sort of already said, but I definitely think that, you know, the Boravia, which also props to the actors for saying these made up, they are made up, right? I really don't mean to disparage any real countries, but I don't remember ever hearing them outside of like fiction. I forget if they've been in comics I've read, but certainly it's... Anyway, I really got the sense that, yeah, the aggressive country was like a combination of Russia invading Ukraine and, you know, eventually there's consequences. it took entirely too long for us Western countries. And I'm willing to admit, I'm not just like firing off in other directions here. I think we Danish people, the Danish government, should have taken steps sooner. Um, but that's one of the things going on there, and the other is that the country stands in for Israel committing a genocide in Gaza. And that, again, because they specifically say, the other country hasn't always been, we're not on the best terms with it. And Superman's like, and that means we should just let them die? That's such a, because that's exactly right. It's not that we should let them die, but he's right. He's right that we shouldn't. And yeah, we got to get past this, perfect victim mentality. Just because someone's done something bad doesn't mean we shouldn't protect them if somebody else is attacking them. And let's see, because that's what, like, holy crap, how many, don't make a drinking game out of how many, times you'll hear like, oh, but, Palestinians are misogynists, they don't like trans people, and all this stuff. And then we see, like, pro-Israeli propaganda, pro-IDF propaganda, and it's like, you're actually doing a transphobia, homophobia thing right now, in addition to the Islamophobia, and making Palestinians out to be terrible. So you clearly don't actually believe, yeah. They love to let's see, is it called woke wash? They want us to think that they're, these wonderful, that they share our, far left values, and it's like, but you're committing genocide though. Like, you can't just put a, try to dress it up like that. Just, yeah. I think some of these, some of the people trying to appeal, they're so used to appealing to conservatives that they don't understand. We on the left actually care what you do, not just what you show. I swear, earlier today, I saw a clip. Let's see, I think it was in Dead Domain's video on the No Kings protests and such. There was like a conservative trying to be taken seriously and saying, oh, look at how terrible it is. And dude literally opens by showing obvious AI of like Trump punching protesters. And it's like, how are we supposed to take anything you're about to show us seriously? Yeah. And that's a pretty good place for me to plug. Cavernacle recently did a video on why conservatives love AI slop. But yeah, I thought they did a good job. You gotta be careful with things like this, because, real, like, I'm sorry. I'm aware sometimes I overanalyze, sometimes I read into things. I do think that, the conflict of this movie is supposed to be a stand-in for those two. There's so much of a resemblance. I'm so glad Zlatko Buric is still working. I haven't seen him in something new in years, but yeah. He's so freaking talented. I'm so glad he's international now. Yeah, we've been very fond of him here in Denmark for some decades now. I guess 30 years or something, maybe close to that at least. So yeah. And he did a fantastic job as always. He's so freaking good. Let's see, I think that might just about cover. But yeah, I loved during the interview, he specifies, there were no injuries or casualties. Because he says, oh, I busted up a tank. And, immediately that does bring up, like, because I don't think he means like a water container. I'm pretty sure he means like a military tank. Also because I'm pretty sure it's not the Left 4 Dead special infected either. But yeah, I mean, him busting up a tank, like, I can imagine he like flew down, ripped it open like tinfoil, picked up the people, put them outside, and then like further smashed the tank, just to say, like, you know, I can stop you, but I'd rather you just not do this. You know, and yeah, that's the thing. Like he doesn't. He's not like, oh, I went there and kicked their ass. No, he's just like, you know, I made my point. I showed them what the yeah. Not the biggest fan of the thing about, you know, because like Lois points out, that's technically torture. You know, yeah, cactus thing. Yeah, I hope that it was basically just like exaggeration. Um, yeah, let's see, and certainly, you know, the let's see, yeah, a bigger. I was not a huge fan of the fact that it ends with his death. Because it kind of felt like, no, we're doing this thing where we don't have to use violence against people. Like a lot of the violence in the movie, it's, you know, to stop creatures that cannot be reasoned with, like the Godzilla thing, for example. Yeah, I think that might cover. And I do appreciate that it wasn't Superman doing it, but the Hawk Girl. I think there's only the second thing I see. Well, let's see. Isabella Merced. No, wait, no. She was in. She was in Madam Web, wasn't she? Yeah. I'm not judging anybody who appears in that movie's acting based on that. But no, she was great. Here, she was great in Alien Romulus. You know, I'd like to see her in more stuff. Yeah, I think that might just about bring us. Let's see. Yeah. I think. Yeah, I felt like, you know, the argument between the verbal fight, you know, which I also really appreciate. At no point did it feel like, oh, is he gonna like lose control and hurt her? No, because that, you know, that he can control himself. You know, that is something that, you know, it's important for all men to be able to. But yeah, you know, it felt like both of them had their points to make. It didn't feel like anybody was like terrible in that situation, and it felt like the kind of argument, you know, a couple might have. And that's of course also part of, you know, like, so Lois sort of breaks up with him and then he disappears, so she's especially determined to find him. I appreciate that it's, you know, arguably melodramatic kind of trait, but sometimes that works really well in comic book media, you know. Let's see. I think that does bring us to yeah. So Lex and the others go to the. Yeah, it was very clever. The thing about, you know, engineer is like, I'll cut, you know, my way there, and, you know, Lex says no, we'll, you know, and at first, yeah, it's like, how did he get in there? And then no, Ultraman is, you know, and they did such a great job, because I don't know, maybe I should have figured it out, but I didn't, you know, because like it's everyone there is just standing in front of it, so, you know, I don't know, I guess they found some way, you know. Yeah, it was great. Lex using, I don't know if maybe this means they're not gonna do what was it called again, the battle armor, I think, that Lex sometimes has, which I can appreciate. I do think this was very interesting, you know. But yeah, you know, he's programmed in all these moves, and, you know, he brags about, brain beats brawn, and then, you know, Superman is like, so if I prevent you from controlling, you know, Ultraman, he's not going to be able to merge with the Ultra Mega Man, and I'm going to be able to defeat him. It is one of those things I wouldn't have hated if there was maybe something about, oh, you know, technically, like, Ultraman is how you know, a lot of the public right now sees Superman because of the full translated message. Or, you know, well, yeah, we based him on your DNA and he's following what your parents said. But he was doing that before the message, so it doesn't completely work. But not everything has to have that level of depth. I think, yeah, just, you know, really great scene of them taking the place, and, you know, saw blades and cutting through the robots, and Lex just walking, you know, not a care in the world. And, you know, she managed to get the entire message. And that was also, you know, the moment that they said, oh, part of the message was corrupted, I was thinking, we're going to hear the rest of the message before the movie's over. I didn't expect it to be so early in the movie. I think maybe half an hour in, we hear the full, yeah, really, I appreciate that. Then we have, oh, right, when Ultraman lands and walks through like teleporters, wonderfully done. I love all the sparks. You know, it's a simple thing, but it makes it feel like, no, this is a real thing. You know, because like, yeah, it uses, you know, when it's active, there's these little signs that it's active, and also sparks immediately make you think, is that 100% safe? Because, like, you know, when we're dealing with stuff that sparks in the real world, you know, the people working on it have training and security equipment, you know, so that's, yeah. I don't know exactly what they're called, but there are these suits that protect you against sparks, you know, and yeah, sure enough, it's not actually, you know, it's not safe. And that was also very Elon Musky, with the, yeah, putting ego over safety concerns. I really hope he gives up on Mars at some point. But I'm not saying we'll never have anything on Mars. I don't think he's gonna be the one to do, because, yeah. And I mean, the monkeys have to be a reference, right? And that is also a fun way of saying, you know, because, like, in real life, a lot of them are like bots, like, you know, robots. But, yeah, it feels like a pretty solid burn to be like, if you are, like, spreading, you know, purposefully spreading misinformation and hate online, yeah, you remind me of a monkey. You know, I'm not a big fan of, like, dehumanizing actual people, but yeah, it's not, it's behavior that doesn't embody empathy. And that was also such a great, you know, there at the end, like, Superman's like, I'm not better than you because I'm strong. It's just, I, you know, I use my humanity to guide my decisions, and so could you. You know, and that's such a, and that's pitch perfect Superman. And then Lex is like, I forget his words, but he refuses, and that's, yeah, that's Lex Luthor, you know. Yeah, I think the that does pretty well get us to, so the, yeah, the fight against, that was also such a great, you know, we see how, like, aggressive the Godzilla is when it's a baby Godzilla, and they let out, and it's like, wow, it's pretty small distraction. It's like, oh, it'll get better, it'll get bigger. Little ones, they grow. And yeah, cool fight, and yeah, the just great details about, you know, the Justice Gang just trying to stop it, and stopping it in a brutal way, and Superman making sure people are safe around there, you know. And then by the end, you know, the Justice Gang are actually helping civilians. So very nicely done there. I think that does get us to, yeah. So you know, after the big, you know, fight, I like, you know, Nathan Fillion. I hope that James Gunn keeps putting him in everything, because I really enjoy it. But yeah, and he's like, why aren't they clapping? Because, like, I get that he's like, there's something off here, but, like, he specifically said, no, I don't, you get, you're supposed to applaud us. Just standing ovation. That was your cue, because like in some way he is doing it primarily for that. He wants adulation, and that's part of why he drags his feet on helping for the rest of the movie. But yeah, the message, and I thought they did a great job. It was such a good element that like some of the kids there like go up and like hug Superman, and then you get the message, and are you getting the message? And then the message, and then I think it's their mom like drags them away, and you also see in the kids' face they're like, I trusted you, kind of thing. Just really really nicely done there. And yeah, at the end of the day, like, that's not Superman though. That's his parents. That doesn't mean, and Lex calls him a groomer. Like, yeah, the politics are wonderfully unsubtle here. And that's the response to, because like it's brought up like, well, he's been doing good, and then because that's when we allies of the LGBTQIA plus, henceforth LGBT, I don't mean to exclude anyone, it just rolls off the tongue better. When we allies of the LGBT community point out, they're not actually doing anything, they're just living their lives, then, the transphobes and homophobes say, no, it's grooming. Living your life in a way that doesn't negatively affect other people, that's somehow grooming, because at that point it sounds sinister, and it of course distracts from actual grooming, which a lot of the time is done by cis men, straight men, cis straight men. Let's see, I think that does get us to, but yeah, I really appreciate they actually did say, no, the message is legit, I know those IT people. This was real, I kept thinking that there was going to be something with the suitcase. I don't know, maybe I missed something. But the guy who kept carrying a suitcase and like opening and closing and such. Anyway, but it wasn't like, it didn't feel like, okay, there has to be something here. Yeah, I think, right, and I really like that they fought back. Lex is like, so I've got an army, which, my Chitauri will follow. Yeah, and he explains about Ultraman and the engineer and such, and yeah, now the audience knows how those work, and yeah, he's trying to get these military contracts because the movie is not subtle about what this is. Yeah. And yeah, the thing about, oh, he's going to own, chunk of the country they're going to be invading. So, Trump Gaza is what you're saying. Like, did we know that when this was written, or was that just like an educated guess? Because I do feel like it makes sense that would be why he clearly doesn't care about the people there. He's talking about, oh, I mean, it's a bad place to live. Like, it's dangerous. Yeah, because of the IDF. Like, you could put pressure on Netanyahu and, help stop that. But no, you just want money. Everything to Donald Trump is an opportunity to enrich himself and stroke his own ego. I think that does, let's see. Where does that get us? That gets us to the, yeah, and also, suddenly everyone's talking about, oh, like, harem. And it's like, he never said anything about a harem, and that gets into like, white genocide and white replace. Is it white replacement or is it just replacement theory? I forget, but yeah, this thing of like, oh, these, at least one alien is coming to take over where we live. And in part by having sex with our women and all this, like, holy crap, that's just, it absolutely nails it. And I do not think that it was random that, yeah, Superman's always been an alien, but it's not always used this like explicitly to comment on. Yeah, he just wants to live his life, he wants to do good, and that's what actual, immigrants usually, yeah, they want to just contribute. A bunch of people who've been arrested and deported by ICE were literally like trying to get work. They were arrested at a place where they were trying to get work or trying to work. In some cases, so they already had a job there, and yeah, Stephen Miller like has, I forget if it was like a leak or what exactly, but we do now know. Yeah, he was angry when they were like going after criminals. He's like, no, just get any. I just want them out of the country. This is my country. And yeah, here's this movie saying, no, it's actually evil to, abuse, immigrants, and yeah, they even put, they do arrest and deport him, and even though he's going willingly, they still brutalize him. Yeah, just they do such a great job of that in this movie, conveying that. I think that does get us to the yeah. So he ends up in the cell, and there's that one guy who's like scaring Joseph to get Joey's dad to, and then, yeah, he makes kryptonite out of his arm, and at first he comes across as very harsh, but it's because his son is in danger, and that again, like by the end he's a hero. He helps save the day, becomes a Justice Gang member, and of course now there's going to be photoshopped images circulating where they tried to make it look like he has MS-13 on his hand. Anyway, yeah, then we have, yes, it was, because he was being treated badly, and so much of the time, if someone is, doing the wrong thing, that is what it is, and if they get a chance, if you solve their problem, yeah, they can help do good. Again, this is what I want out of Superman, this feels like comics Superman. This is part of why Superman has endured. I mean, we're getting close to 100 years, aren't we, of Superman existing in some form of media, and yeah, there's a lot of characters who've come and gone in that time that just didn't have something that, yeah, we want to believe in hope, and hope in belief. And let's see, yeah, the thing about, he convinces him to stop, kryptoniting him. I was also, what's that kryptonite thing called? Kryptonite. And then he's like, oh, why do you still look so messed up? This, sun, there's no sun here. Starting to realize that. Let's see, and yeah, he's like, I can't make a sun, but I can make something similar. That was a great, yeah, and he does, and I believe it's accurate, the things he says that are needed for something like a sun. And yeah, understandably, one of the other, one of Lex's exes in the Nexus, is like calling out for a guard, because because there's that thing about, it's gonna hurt all of us. And that's, again, a lot of the time when someone is doing something wrong, it's because they think it's going to hurt them or someone they care about. It's not always, this exact, equivalent, but allegorical. Yeah. As that, it works. That brings us to, yeah, I guess I should bring him. So yeah, Lois goes to the, Justice Gang hideout and talks to them. And the thing about, the only reason Superman's not a member is because he would not like the name Justice Gang, and you would be outvoted. And the thing about, no, it's part of my oath that I don't get involved in politics. Now that's part of his oath. there's a lot of things in my oath. It's implied, okay? You know, yeah, this centrist BS kind of, you know, just not wanting to get involved, and yeah. Seriously, American centrists are so freaking frustrating. Anyway, those are the ones I'm referring to here. Then we have the yeah, the thing, you know, he's like, oh, so you know about the hypno goggles. I don't think you should. I know about them, but I don't think you should be telling them to people you don't know if they know. So you know he's Clark Kent. He just tells everybody. You know, that was, yeah. Well, we're, you know, brothers in the cloth, like the suit, you know. But yeah, then we have the yeah. I did appreciate that. The yeah, hypno goggles. I believe I've heard that that's a thing in at least some of the comics as well, and it does explain it. I do think that the Christopher Reeves movies handled it well by just, you know, the body language and posture are completely different. You know, the way he uses his voice and all. But I can't hate something that's that wonderfully comic booky. Hypno goggles that have you seeing someone other than just, yeah. Yeah, you know, at first they turn down Lois, and then she, you know, she turns and she walks away. Ugly pants, hands in pocket. That's a reference. I'm not criticizing her fashion choice. And you know, then, you know, guess who shows up? Mr. Terrific. And yeah, the thing about, you have a flying saucer, but the door opens slowly. Yeah, I'm still working on that. And yeah, the thing about, you know, oh yeah, I put trackers in the blood of you know, the people I work with, and you know, Hawk Girl is like, yeah. Let's see. Then we have, also quite liked her shriek. It's been so long since I read a comic that she appeared in, but I could imagine that sounds like something they would have, because Hawks do, you know, yeah. And the fact that she does actually use the mace, I think it's called, and that was also, you know, because she's like using it on some of the worst people. But yeah, you know, they go to the portal, and you know, Terrific, you know, at first, like what were I forget what the army, the military force that Lex had was called. Predators, maybe. Which, yeah, I mean, it's hard to deny. It's very, because like, again, they're really reminiscent of ICE, and also some like other law enforcement that was, you know, yeah, used against like the LA protests, you know, and yeah, behaving in a predatory manner. That is what you'll hear if you listen to, you know, left-leaning people actually properly documenting those protests. But yeah, the thing with the yeah, you know, it was fun seeing them get beaten, and they're also like, at first they're like impotent, like, please stop, Miss. No, you can't do that. This is our place. You know, just, and eventually they do start using their weapons, and he makes a force field for her, and you know, using his powers to take them out was, yeah, great stuff. Yeah, and he gets them to the gate, and they go through, and they do that thing where for a while the gate seems to be closing really rapidly, and then minutes pass, and then we cut back and it's still not fully closed, even though it seems like enough time had passed. But it was a really tense scene. Great to have that additional ticking clock, that, you know, because like, hypothetically, if they hadn't opened it, if Superman had just gotten to the gate and been able to open it from there wouldn't really have been tension. But great job on that. And the thing about, you know, Luthor didn't care that, because we find out, you know, he knew that this was dangerous, and then he's like, well, I don't really care about Metropolis, and I'm safe. You know, and the other guy's like, well, I don't know where we're gonna land it. There's not gonna be a planet left. Yeah. If that's not like alluding to how, tech billionaires and conservative government people and such are worsening climate change for short-term gain for themselves, and long-term destruction for all of us, short-term harm for themselves as well and their constituents and such. But yeah, I think that does bring us to, yeah, it was so like I said, I don't think you should take a kid to this, but I will probably eventually watch the John Wick movies. I haven't watched them yet. There's so many things I want to watch these days, but I've heard that those get very brutal. So I can imagine not wanting to take a 13-year-old to one of those. If you want a movie with a John Wick element that you could take a 13-year-old to, yeah, this'll do. I did consider saying that in the review, but it's like, no, people are gonna know. Seeing Lex be so cruel to Crypto was like, oh, you're going down. I'm so glad that he didn't die by the end. I look forward to seeing more of him, and they say he's going to Belle Reve, so something like that, and yeah, that's. I mean, I guess he's not going to be president in this version. That seems unlikely, because I mean, he doesn't have 47 convictions for felonies, does he? I think, is that the minimum now if you want to be a Republican? But that joke is inspired by the Parody Project. Check them out. Anyway, crap, where did we get to the But yeah, the thing about, oh, he thinks he's chasing squirrels, and they're testing on him. And then they're going to, yeah, they're going to send it off to a space farm on Krypton. And just, yeah, so glad when it was freed from there. Also great late in the movie when it's like it went into like a pet store and started messing up stuff there. But yeah, flies over and they're able to get out of there. Yeah, great. So I already mentioned, effects designs. Love the Godzilla design. Love the design on. See, he really made me think of like the Boatman on the River Styx. Is that right? It's something along those lines, But yeah, and here's Superman without chocolate buttons for his eyes, crying chocolate tears. But yeah, I think that does cover. Yeah, really cool when they're the actual black hole and getting away from that, and Crypto not understanding. No, you don't go towards the light. Just and they do manage to get away from there. And yeah, Mr. Terrific saying those things cost so much money though. But yeah, they managed to get back out of there and get Clark to his parents, the Kents. Yeah, Pruitt Taylor Vince did a fantastic job. He would not have been. I would not have guessed that he would be a good Pa Kent, Jonathan Kent. But yeah, fantastic. And yeah, he doesn't have an awful lot of screen time, but he imparts good values. And also the thing with, the senior moment with them struggling with the phone, and the, being like, oh, we don't want to be, we don't want to keep you from something, and the bit with, your dad says, don't be a stranger. Right, and the thing with, you have a dog? And the, yeah, Crypto just lying on top of, Superman there and wagging its tail and the whole, yeah. I think, does that pretty well get us to the, I will say, so when we saw the clip in a trailer of, there's something in the background, and in the foreground, some kind of phenomenon in the background, and in the foreground you have Lois and Superman, hugging and such. Yeah, some conservatives, including Shadiversity, were like, "Oh, see, Superman in this movie is just gonna ignore this thing that's happening," and Anthony Gramuglia and others pointed out, no, it actually looks like it's being handled by someone else. Like, it certainly seems like Green Lantern is using his power there to like contain it. And yeah, I too thought, oh, he must have just fought it and now they have it under control. And then he comes in and he's like, oh, I was looking for my dog, which, yeah, I mean, they did have it under control, I think that does get us to, let's see, right, Lex just letting Metropolis, I mean, at least they did evacuate, but then he's also like, well, they chose Superman over me, so let them die. Yeah, conservative, yeah. And the exes being treated badly, Musk been trying to have kids until eventually one of them likes him, and yeah, several of his exes have come out and said, nope, he's not a good person. I think that might get us to the yeah. I thought that Corn Sweat did great playing Bizarro as well. And the thing with, stop wasting time. I'm doing important stuff. That was a great, yeah. And yeah, ending up sending Bizarro into the black hole. And I guess I'll just briefly, so I don't forget. Yeah, so one of the mid-credit scene is like, looks like he's on the moon or an asteroid or something and looking. Is he looking at Earth or another planet? I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it was neat, and maybe it is some sequel tease that I'm not really understanding. And the other one, yeah, it was fun. It was cute. This thing of like, well, I'm just saying it looks a little weird, Mr. Terrific's like, and Clark's like, oh, I'm sorry, just yeah. I think that does get us to so yeah, Superman gets into the workstation. Also really loved, Lex really getting into, 1A, 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 Yeah. Makes me yearn to play a tournament fighter again. It's in the cards. Anyway, that I think brings us to the, let's see. What was the other thing that there was there? Yeah, so let's see. I talked about the speech, the fantastic monologue, and yeah, Lex also got some really great villain monologues, whereas Superman's were heroic ones, obviously. But yeah, the thing about he's not a he's an it. He's dehumanizing him because he's an alien, and yeah, we hear that all the time. We hear this kind of dehumanizing language against, immigrants, against trans people, and we gotta stop it. We gotta, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it was very satisfying when he, the thing with, Crypto beating him up, throwing him against stuff, and Superman being like, no, Crypto, this is not what I want. And meanwhile, we in the audience are like, yeah, please, stop. I'm not in favor of violence in the real world, but sometimes it can be cathartic in media. Yeah, also the thing with, you took my dog. What dog? I don't know a dog. You mean the little nasty, ugly one that was wearing a cape and answered to Crypto and please get really upset by this because, you know, the other microphone isn't picking it up. What? That was good. Yeah. Nicholas Hoult in interviews seems like a genuinely nice guy. You know, it doesn't mean you're a jerk in real life just because you gravitate towards playing jerks. But yeah, just he's so good at this. I'm glad he's also playing jerks. You know, yeah. I think that does get us to the last little bit. So let's see. Yeah, it was great when let's see, Superman. I think it's Godzilla who like steps on him and then like digs his way out. That was a great, you know, because there are, you know, briefly there we are like, I thought he was going to catch the foot and be standing there, but nope, he's you know. Yeah, I think I may have already said it, but I loved how much there was of Superman saving people in this and how clear it was. No, he needs to be there to save this person. This is not them being careless or something. You know, this is meta-human stuff. I also really appreciate it. I thought they did a good job on the engineer of like, yeah, there's like personality there. She has an actual character. You know, she's not like a wonderful person or anything, but, you know, that is almost everything. Yeah, sweet there at the end with, you know, Lois and Superman walking off, and then I forget who, but someone is like, how long have they been together? You know, just like, because like, come on, it's obvious. And a lot of times in real life, it is also, you might think that you're doing a super smooth job of hiding that you're with that person, but other people might be able to tell. And that's also such a romantic image of, you know, he's flying her up, and they're just, yeah, really, really sweet. That's also something I'm glad that we can, you know, lean into, you know, yeah, why shouldn't Superman be romantic with Lois? Like, we got to get back to, you know, feeling comfortable when men are romantic, you know, with women that they, you know, care deeply about. Fellas, it is not gay to like a woman a lot and be willing to, you know, express it with gestures or words or such. There's a number of women who really love that, and just like one of the big things that, you know, women really want from their partner is just make sure they know that you really care about them. You know, express that. You'd be surprised. Like I was genuinely surprised the first time because I had heard so much conservative propaganda against women. So much of it, they just want you to care, to show that, to protect them. You know, yeah, they don't want you to. Well, some do want you to like take charge of the relationship, but a number of them don't. And if they don't, you know, either find a way to be comfortable with that, or maybe you need to find someone who does, but don't try to force it on someone who doesn't. I think. Oh, right, cool Peacemaker cameo. I mean, I had heard that he was going to be. Yeah, is he like the one character? Well, not character, but casting that carried it over, or is it the entire Peacemaker show? Which I know at some point I got to get to it. There's so many things to watch, and I don't have that streaming service. Probably not gonna get it. I don't expect to get a different one than Disney Plus. Not one that's paid for anyway. And I only get the ones that are, you know, other than Disney Plus. I'm only gonna get the ones that are legal and free. I think that does. Yes. So I don't love the Eve Tessmacher stuff. I think that there was an attempt to kind of, you know, redeem that whole portrayal, and I do appreciate, you know, she's important in, you know, at least one of, I won't spoil for those who haven't watched, but at least one of the Christopher Reeves Supermans. And she was in some ways worse there, so this is an attempt to kind of fix that. And I do think, you know, I mean, at first I thought, oh, this is one of those obnoxious, you know, young people be on their phones thing, oh, there's danger and she's taking a selfie. They even put that in the trailer, But then we find out, oh, she was actually taking selfies of important things and recording, so when she sends all those selfies to Jimmy, at first he and we think, oh, what is she doing, and the door opens is like, well, put her in the machine, I guess. I really didn't think that this person would be a whistleblower, but here we are. And then she keeps encountering that person multiple times after that. Like, they become like a recurring threat. That was a pretty cool element of that DLC. But yeah, turns out, she was documenting all this stuff, very clever. And, because she heard how badly, he keeps putting his exes in cages. Is that why Musk renamed Twitter X? Because he has so many X's? But she, Eve, yeah, I don't think that it completely makes up for. Right, did I already say? I mentioned that I like that in this movie, good journalism counts, and I hope it does still in the real world. I really appreciated that they worked as a team, and they proved it to Perry before, and yeah, once he's seen, no, they have sources and the story holds up, sure, publish it, That's another thing. We got to get away from this thing of like, your boss is your worst enemy if you're a journalist. No, they're just, like, sometimes, yes, depends on where you work, but some of them are just trying to make sure, like, we gotta not get, we can't put something out that we don't know if it's true or not. And yeah, here we have a Perry White, who I believe this is also true in the comics. Yeah, if it's true, he wants it, if it's good journalism, he wants to publish it. And the fact that, yeah, I worry at this point that it's wish fulfillment, just, fantasy kind of stuff, but God, it would be good if, because there's been so many, we've found out so many terrible things about Trump and Musk and other powerful conservatives, and still hasn't led to, yeah. Anyway, I think, yeah, just the fact that they make her clingy and that Jimmy, like, for so much of it is like, oh, do we have to spend time, the whole weekend? No, I want to spend time. Like, it feels like a scene from a 60s, movie. Like, come on, man, are we seriously still doing this obnoxious thing? And then there at the end, they try to, like, fix it by that, that is a genuine smile. I'll grant. Jimmy has a genuine smile there when, she says we can be together forever. And first his face is like, how do I feel about this? And then he smiles, And I think Gunn is trying to do a thing of like, sometimes women know, what men need from women better than men do. And I think that is often true, but the movie encourages us to laugh at her, for being, they could have done it without that. They could have had it just be that his reactions to her, are exaggerated, instead of her actually, because I'm sorry, she is kind of clingy, and like it makes sense from the perspective of, well, she has to get away from Lex, and if she just leaves, he's going to put her in prison. But yeah, they make us laugh at her, and I think, for example, I think Joey's dad was handled better because he outright does evil things, but he fully redeems himself, and I don't think they nailed that with Eve. Also, the thing with, essentially it's a movie where confident women, if there's any kind of like sexuality or them being like, oh, this woman really wants this man, we're encouraged to laugh or agree that feels threatening, because like Lois isn't like that. She's like almost commitment-phobic. But other than Eve, as he's walking to, we don't realize that it's Eve yet. Later it turns out it's all about Eve, but, he's walking through this bad neighborhood, and we have these, like, basically, I can never remember which is the term. Okay, sex worker, I know, is not offensive. The sex workers who basically, like, hit on him. And yeah, we're supposed to think, oh, these, no, this this is a scary situation kind of thing. And we also have the, you know, not real there's not really any characterization of the young woman who works at the Daily Planet, other than that she's like annoying and Lois doesn't want to listen to her because she's like talking about something that doesn't matter, whilst the TV in the background is showing something that does. You know, like, yeah, she's kind of sexualized in a way that didn't feel at all necessary. And you know, like the women, you know, you have Lois who dresses just like, you know, she's not like dressing to like attract romantic attention. She looks professional, and then you have these women who are not very professional looking, and yeah, you know, yeah, I think it's not handled as well as it could have been. I think that does cover. And I do, you know, I'm fond of the trope of, you know, someone hiding in plain sight, you know, because like it's not like Eve is like sneaking around taking pictures. She's constantly posing for selfies. It's just that nobody thinks about, well, what's in the background of those selfies, you know, kind of thing. So that was very nicely done. Yeah, really glad that James Gunn has so much influence over the DCU, and really looking forward to more of it. I'd like to watch Creature Commandos again. I think it's maybe HBO Max, something. Yeah. Anyway, I think that does. Let's see. I am perhaps somewhat considering taking like a month of HBO Max, but I would basically have to be sure that I can get to everything that I want to watch that's on there in that time. Anyway, it's also possible that at some point I'll try to get the DVDs or something of these shows. Yes, I think that covers everything that I really wanted to say. Is there anything that is? Let's see. Oh, right. The Supergirl cameo there at the end. Obviously, I hope that the next time we see her, there's not going to be, you know, she's essentially like it's they do a joke with her. You know, oh, you know, she went to a red sun, you know, planet for her holiday. She can get drunk. You can't on a yellow sun. I mean, maybe. I mean, certainly, to be clear, getting drunk does not mean that you are like a bad person or incapable. Like, you know, even hypothetically, even if they were like, oh, she's an alcoholic. I mean, maybe she can recover from that over the course of her. You know, she's getting a solo movie, isn't she? Or she's just gonna appear more in other people's stuff. But the next time when she gets like a meaty role, they could either explain, yeah, I mean, sometimes she gets drunk. That's also something, you know, yeah, that doesn't mean that you're out of control or something, you know. And the fact that she doesn't really set boundaries with the dog doesn't mean she's a bad person, you know. So that's how some people are with their dogs. But yeah, I can't really judge how I feel about the casting of her based on this, because obviously she's not going to be like the drunk superhero throughout her movie. I would be shocked if that were the case. But yeah, I don't know. She looked the part fine enough. I didn't think there was any problem there. I think that does pretty well cover. Let's see. But yeah, the fact that, you know, they're near the end, you know, they're flying in the what's Mr. Terrific's ship called again? T-Mobile. Flying around that thing, you know, all the reporters and such, and you know, she's flying it. She's piloting it and also dictating the you know, yeah, really nicely done there. Yeah, I think that does cover it. Right, I did just briefly want to talk about, so yeah, one of the reasons this should probably not be watched by anyone under the age of 13, the sort of Russian roulette. Is it Russian roulette if it's someone else's? Anyway, but yeah, yeah. I mean, Lex is surprised. He's like, the yeah, he thought it would go for longer, and asking questions. That was also this thing. I'll go after that reporter you're always talking to, which that popped up in the trailer, and there it felt like, oh, he's gonna go after Lois Lane. Decent misdirect there. She is in danger. She isn't the danger, um, except with a pen. But yeah, he's trying to get information and has to give up pretty quickly. He's like, puts the thing in, spins it, and okay, got one answer. And also this poor guy just yeah, he gave Superman a falafel, and now he's like, oh, dangerous criminal. Again, just this anti-immigrant sentiment, well represented, and we gotta fight it. Did I already mention that the pocket dimension prison, yeah, feels a lot like, yeah, these prisons that some of these, people are being deported to, for not really, like, a lot of them haven't done, and like some of them have, oh, they were not there, they were not in the country legally. Okay, so help them become legal citizens. Like, a lot of them have jobs, they didn't do something horrible or something. Like, I'm not saying that absolutely none of them did. I'm saying, okay, so go after the ones that are like violent. I can appreciate, I don't necessarily know about deportation, and I'm a prison abolitionist anyway, but I get that there are some people where you have to, I think we gotta. I'm not the best person to explain it, but there are other ways. There, you can reform a lot of people, but certainly don't go after the ones that are just not, in the country legally. But yeah, Lex, I think it's the second, he asks, yeah, the second time he pulls the trigger, shoots, and he's like, I didn't think that was gonna happen. Lex, you put a live round in that gun? I mean, I guess. Okay, there had to be no more than like an 8% chance, right? 8%. Who taught me math?